Hurricane Allen was one of the most powerful storms ever to sweep across the Atlantic, but its intimidating legacy has faded into history, overshadowed by more recent storms. It is the end of July 1980, and a tropical wave drifts off the African coast without much notice, save from those meteorologists at the National Hurricane Center tracking it across the warm waters of the Atlantic. The atmosphere is ripe with unusually warm sea temperatures and a favorable wind pattern. What had started as a modest tropical wave began to organize at a staggering speed, a transformation that would leave even seasoned meteorologists in awe. By July 31st, their fears are confirmed. A mighty storm is brewing, and its name is Allen. Over the next few days, Allen would balloon into a hurricane of unprecedented intensity, leaving a trail of destruction and etching its name into the record books. By August 1st, the swirling system was no longer just another tropical disturbance. It had evolved into a strong storm, its eye starting to form with thunderstorms blowing up around its core. The Atlantic was feeding it just right. Warm waters and favorable atmospheric conditions allowed it to grow stronger by the hour. Meteorologists were growing increasingly uneasy. They were afraid of the storm's rapid intensification, knowing it could become a monster capable of catastrophic destruction, a hurricane that would cut a swath of devastation across the Caribbean and beyond. By August 2nd, their worst fears were realized. Allen reached hurricane status, with winds roaring past 74 miles per hour and strengthening relentlessly. Later that same day, it became a Category 2 hurricane, its well-defined eye signaling its growing menace. The Lesser Antilles, including Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, felt its wrath as hurricane-force winds and heavy rainfall began battering the islands. Though the storm's core remained to the south, its sheer intensity left the Caribbean on edge, bracing for what Allen might unleash next. By August 3rd, Allen's transformation was nothing short of astonishing. For the second day in a row, meteorologists were stuck to their screens, watching this storm increase in strength hour by hour. Its structure was almost perfect, with tightly wrapped bands of thunderstorms spiraling around a quickly shrinking eye. What was Allen morphing into? The storm seemed destined for something well out of the ordinary, and forecasters knew they were witnessing history unwind. But the real question lurked: how powerful was Allen going to become? On August 4th, Allen had its answer terrifyingly. The storm reached its first peak as a Category 5 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 190 miles per hour, solidifying its place as one of the strongest hurricanes ever recorded in the Atlantic. Allen had now fully evolved into the textbook definition of a catastrophic storm: a compact, well-defined eye, towering convection, and a wind field capable of tearing apart anything in its path. As it barreled across the warm waters of the Caribbean, its intensity became more than just a record. The power was now a dire threat. From St. Lucia to the eastern Caribbean, islands in its path braced themselves, their communities fearing the worst. Allen was no longer just a storm, but an unrelenting force, ready to unleash devastation on whatever might stand in its path. But even as its winds roared at 190 miles per hour, one haunting question remained. Would Allen hold its strength, or was the worst yet to come? By August 5th, something extraordinary happened. Allen, which had briefly weakened, managed to regain Category 5 intensity again, a rare feat for any hurricane. Meteorologists were stunned as the storm, against all odds, tapped into the warm waters and rebuilt its strength. How many hurricanes could claim one or two peaks of this magnitude? For those in its path, the question wasn't about records anymore, survival. As August 6th wore on, Allen started to break a little, but it was still a monster. Falling to Category 4, the Caribbean didn't get a break. Jamaica took the full brunt of the storm as it pounded the island with heavy rains and incessant winds. Even though the eye of the storm remained offshore, the destruction could not be avoided. Towns were inundated with flooding, landslides demolished homes, and the fragile infrastructure collapsed. Then, Haiti and the Dominican Republic stood directly in the storm's path. In Haiti, it reached an awful degree of destruction. The rains were unyielding, cutting swathes through whole villages. Deforestation had left the land defenseless, with disastrous flooding and landslides. Entire communities were wiped out, and more than 220 lives were lost just in Haiti. The Dominican Republic was a little better off, but the destruction was still profound. Lives uprooted, homes shattered, and a nation left reeling. On August 7th, Allen was closing in on the Yucatan Peninsula, weakened some, but still destruction to deliver. The complete brunt of it fell upon the Cayman Islands as hurricane-force winds tore through homes and businesses, leaving a catastrophic path of damage. The storm surges swallowed whole coasts, and the islands were left devastated. Power lines down, clean water in scarce supply, and rescue efforts hampered by the scale of destruction. Yet, even as Allen moved westward, its true strength still loomed over those ahead. Was this to be the storm's final act of destruction, or was it building to something greater? Those in its path could only prepare for what was to come. By August 8th, Allen seemed to be losing its grip, weakening as it entered the Gulf of Mexico, now a Category 3 hurricane. This might have looked like the storm was finally winding down to the untrained eye. But was it really? The meteorologists had seen enough to understand that Allen was no ordinary storm. Already, its re-strengthening had managed to stun forecasters twice. Would the Gulf's warm waters breathe new life into the storm once again? By August 9th, the unthinkable happened. It regained Category 5 strength for a third time, an accomplishment few hurricanes have ever achieved. The monstrous resilience was a hallmark of the storm's rare environment, warm waters, and perfect atmospheric conditions. Now, Allen set its eyes on the Mexico-Texas border, wreaking havoc as coastal communities raced against time to put their house in order. But what level of destruction were they going to experience? Later that day, Allen finally made landfall near the Mexico-Texas border, bringing Category 3 hurricane-force winds that howled at 125 miles per hour, with storm surges of as high as 12 feet to engulf whole communities. Over 20 inches of rain poured into the region, washing out roads, flooding homes, and stranding what felt like a person at every turn. In Texas, the coastal towns bore the full brunt, with homes destroyed, infrastructures crippled, and local economies in shreds. Yet, even as the storm's eye moved inland, its wrath was far from over. By August 10th, Allen had weakened to a shadow of its former self, but its remnants packed a different punch. Torrents of rain swept across Texas and northern Mexico, turning rivers over their banks and making thoroughfares impassable waterways. Whole neighborhoods were submerged, and farmland was ruined. Rescue efforts were heroic, but slow flooded terrain and blocked routes hindered every step. The storm was gone, yet the question lingered. How much suffering would its aftereffects inflict? On August 11th, Allen had dissipated, but the aftermath told a sorry tale. Continuous flooding in the Rio Grande Valley had left thousands without power, homes underwater, and whole communities cut off. The storm was gone, but its presence still hung in the air on every submerged street, every broken power line, and every overflowing emergency shelter. The final chapter in Allen's story may have been written, but its scars still mar the region for many years. Yet, as the recovery ensued, one haunting thought pervaded the air. When the next great storm comes, will we be ready? The devastation left in Hurricane Allen's wake was staggering. At least 238 lives were lost, most of them in Haiti, where storm rains brought catastrophic flooding and landslides without reprieve. But beyond the numbers, the single question that arose very loudly was, why are such disasters more terrible among nations? In Haiti, the destruction caused by Allen has laid bare the vulnerabilities that beset impoverished countries whose fragile infrastructure and deforestation greatly heighten nature's ferocity. Elsewhere, the story was just as grim. Months of recovery in Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, Mexico, and Texas. Entire communities upended, roads washed out, and massive hits to economies. The final tally, $1.57 billion in damages, a price that reflected the hurricane's broad path of destruction across multiple countries. How does a storm like Allen reach such unprecedented devastation, and why is its name still echoing in meteorological history decades later? The reason for this answer lies in Allen's extraordinary nature. It remains the only Atlantic hurricane to sustain winds of 190 miles per hour, something that, until Hurricane Patricia in 2015, had gone unmatched. Other than its unprecedented power, the longevity of Allen as a Category 5 hurricane set it apart in positions spent with more hours than any storm has since achieved, or before then, in the Atlantic Basin. This wasn't just another hurricane. It was an atmospheric siren that saw meteorologists scrambling to study its behavior and emergency planners rethinking their strategies. By 1981, its name was retired from the list of Atlantic hurricanes, replaced by a name that would later become infamous in its own right, Andrew. But for those who lived through Allen, its impact was far from just historical. It was a visceral, life-changing event, a reminder of nature's raw, untamed power. And yet, for all its destruction, Allen also served as a catalyst for progress. Communities came together, rebuilding in the storm's aftermath and proving that the human spirit could endure even the fiercest storms. But what does Allen still have to teach us today? With climate change and ever-increasing hurricane intensities, Allen's story goes past being a memory into one of caution, telling us to be better prepared for those storms. Will we listen, or will history repeat in even more devastating ways?